A question asked courageously, answered honestly, and lived authentically can change your whole life. For me, that question was, how can I use what I have, what I love, and what I know to bless the lives of others? The School for Good Living and this podcast are one answer to that question. Hi, I'm Brian Miller. I know that the world can work for everyone, but that it won't until it works for you. I've created this to help you make the difference you were born to make. It's a series of conversations with thought leaders who are moving humanity forward. And in each episode, I explore their lives and the work they do. I also ask them to break down how they've gotten their books written, published, and read. This podcast is all about exploring the magic and mystery, and sometimes the misery, of the creative process. So if you have a mission, a message, and the motivation to share it, this podcast is for you. Welcome to the School for Good Living. Hello, my friends. Erwan Le Corre is the acknowledged founder and leader of the concept of natural movement. He's been called one of the fittest men in the world and a fitness visionary by Men's Health magazine. Erwan was born in France. He grew up with a black and white TV, no remote, no video games, no personal computers, and no internet. He spent his youth in the woods, living in the suburbs of Paris, maybe 30 miles away. His father encouraged him to run, crawl, climb, jump. He was introduced to karate at 15 years old, which taught him discipline, method, and commitment. By the time Erwan was 19, he'd trained for 7 years in natural and urban settings, climbing bridges, balancing on high places, jumping on roofs, walking on all fours in the underground, swimming in cold water, and practicing all manner of breath training and fighting techniques. At 27, he started a period of sailing, Olympic weightlifting, rock climbing, long-distance triathlon, trail running, and Jujitsu. At 33, he started researching European history of physical education, discovering forgotten training methods. He tells an incredible story of coming across someone who seemed to be dead, walking alone one night in China, taking him home and caring for him. Oh, I do want to say this, that Erwan came to the United States originally granted an O1 visa. It's given only to those who demonstrate extraordinary ability in their field, whether it be arts, sports, business, education, or the sciences. I think Erwan is a pretty remarkable guy. I think if you're not familiar with his work and you enjoy movement, you'll enjoy this interview. Erwan, welcome to the School for Good Living.
Thank you, Brian.
Yeah, I'm so glad to have you here. Erwan, will you tell me, please, what's life about?
Life is, to me, the practice of energy at every level. So, love, breathing, the energy everybody knows, eating food, of course, and then breathing. Well, if you pay attention, then it's really what it is about, to understand that all is energy, but beyond the conceptual understanding, it's really to practice that energy to make yourself thrive. That's the idea to me.
Yeah. When you meet someone new, or if somebody asks you who you are and what you do, how do you often answer that question, or what do you like to say?
I like just to say that I'm a teacher, because usually when people ask you what you do, who you are, well, people rarely ask you who you are. They ask you, what is it that you do? So I say I'm a teacher. I'm an entrepreneur. I own a company. What is it about? Well, it's about fitness, but it's the natural movement type of fitness. Okay, what is this about? Opens plenty of doors. Then I can say that also I'm an author. But who I am, I'm a family man. I'm a father, I'm a husband. That's really what matters to me. And what I do matters as well, but it's not what's priority, definitely not.
Yeah. I mentioned this when I invited you on this show, that I heard you on Mark Divine's podcast on The Unbeatable Mind, and I really loved the conversation that you had. I loved hearing, an East Coast U.S. born, former Navy commander talking with a Frenchman who's also had his share of experiences around the world, and in some ways having a very, very different background, but in some ways, some things very much in common, right? And the physicality and the different approach to being strong, being healthy, being mentally tough. And I really love this concept that you've popularized about natural movement. Will you say a little about what that is and why is it something that our world is really missing today or so many people are looking for?
It's really a challenge that you are asking me because you're asking me to tell a little about it when I just published a book that's 480 pages about it, and my publisher asked me to cut 200 pages about it on top of the fact that I had already dumbed it down to, like the absolute essential that were really essential in my mind. So, natural movement is, let's think about, let's use a simple metaphor. How does any wild animal move? What do they need to do to become and stay fit? Ask yourself about a wild tiger, an eagle, a dolphin, all these completely different animal species. They, from birth to death, their physical behavior has to do with not just surviving, but thriving in the wild. And for that, they are using movement that are species specific. And my question is, why on earth should it be any different for us humans? Because when we look at kids and the way they move without any preconception, without any instruction, they crawl, and then they learn to stand, then they will run and hike and walk and step up and down and crawl more and climb and balance and jump and lift and carry things and throw and catch things. They all do all these things instinctually because they are evolutionary movement skills. It's overall the whole scope of those what I call natural movement abilities represent our original and universal movement behavior, physical behavior. That's our physical nature to do that. The same way eagles fly and dolphins dive and jump off the surface of the ocean, and wild tigers sprint and climb and jump off and pounce and do all these movements. Okay, so we can become very skilled, very physically capable, very strong, very agile by understanding that we too have those skills, those natural movement skills that are specific to human beings, and practicing that. That's what I teach. But that's also the reason why I've developed a method called MoveNat that I've been teaching for about 12 years now.
Now, this book is beautiful. I understand you just published it in January, and it's clear this is a labor of love. I understand you've been, there's really been more than a decade. I mean, it's a life's learning and experience that you've put in these pages, and I love it's very visual. As a nice combination of text and pictures and instruction too, right? I love one of the things that you talk about is about this, about zoo humans. About, in a way, it's like we've confined ourselves, we've caged ourselves, and nobody likes to be trapped, nobody likes to be stuck, and yet we've done this to ourselves. And the absurdity, I think, listening to you, reading some of what you've written, hearing about the kind of absurdity of going to a gym because our lives don't already provide enough variation and physical challenge. And then even when we're in the gym, we're using these machines that they're not natural, but we're isolating, different things that if it was a survival situation or really just an enjoyment thing, it's not necessarily conducive to like what you were saying about thriving, about being fully alive, about enjoying life. So I think this book is definitely one whose time has come. But if you were to say, like, who did you write it for and what did you hope it would do for them? How do you think about that?
For everyone, really. For everyone. Everyone in the modern world, and everyone when I said the modern world is whoever is living by the modern standards of, growing up, going to school, being already confined in classrooms, sitting hours a day, and then you find a desk job one day, and you keep doing that for the rest of your life. You keep living in cities, and everything is boxed, and all your environments are artificial. The air is artificial, the light is artificial, the surface is artificial, the food is artificial, and obviously that means that a lot of our behaviors become, not all of them and not fully, but a lot of our behaviors become artificial as well. And for that we all pay a price. And that is something that I've realized a long time ago. And as long as I can remember, when I was going on hikes with my parents and my family, and I was realizing already that they didn't have the drive to move that I had as a little kid. And I was wondering why already. I was wondering how come they didn't have that joy of movement. Why is it that they didn't want to climb those walls and jump off the walls and have that freedom? They seem to be just trapped in their head talking about stuff. And that exuberance that I had for movement, I never wanted it to be tamed. And it really was a suffering for me to just stay, still in classrooms, even though actually I forced myself because I was actually a good boy. I was not a rebel that way. But at the same time, I was dying inside, really. It was horrible. And when it came to studying and thinking of what would be my job one day, I could not force my head to simply accept that I would live the same way. I had to find something else. So you ask me, who did I write this book for? I wrote this book for whoever has experienced the same, and God knows that's millions and millions of people. Whoever has questioned that idea of normalcy, and a big part of that normalcy that is forced upon us since we're little kids has to do with physical idleness, has to do with just being still physically, not don't do this, don't do that, don't climb that, you're going to hurt yourself, you're going to get dirty, you're going to dirty the walls, you're going to break something, you're going to break your leg. It's constant repression. It's a behavioral repression. And it makes us sad. It makes us depressed. That's the start of depression. Depression is the number one problem of our modern days and modern lifestyle. Depression. People are depressed. A huge part of that has to do with a lack of movement. And even you were talking about, modern gyms and people going to more indoors, sitting on machines, having their exercise movements completely shaped by the machines is absolutely artificial. There's no freedom to it. It's still work. It's still boring. And there's no freedom to this. So it's hard to think of exercise that way as being antidepressor, since it revolves around the exact same principles, the exact same mindset, the exact same behavior that caused our problem in the first place. Let people move. So about 20% of that book is about the philosophy, where I've really packed that manifesto with very powerful insights to make people realize, look, it was never supposed to be that way in the beginning and in the first place. And it's not a fatality. And it can be changed. And this is what should be instead. And what should be instead is not a creation of my mind. What should be instead is an observation of what used to be. And that still is in many places where people live more naturally. But it's also a mindset and a behavior that still is alive in every young child.
Yeah.
And that adults are busy trying to just kill off every day. Just try to minimize and shrink every day. I've always stand against that. I always will. And that whole book is about that. Basically, the whole manifesto of the book is a very philosophical rant against that. And then the rest, and that's 80% of the book, is a practical how-to on how to break through.
Yeah. No, I really love that. And I can tell that this is not just a product for you. Right. And it's not even maybe a lifestyle. I mean, it's a mission. How do you think of the work you're doing?
Highly. The way I think of the work I'm doing, highly. I like to say I actually don't take myself seriously. I know I sound super serious, but my wife would tell you I'm such a kook, I'm a funny guy. But when it comes to talk about what I do, I take it very seriously, because I can see it. I just look everywhere around me. Right now, I'm in an office, and I'm sitting. It's an office work. It's an office environment. But trust me, I agree. I mentally agree, and I'm actually enjoy to participate in that conversation with you, Brian, right now. But only because it's 90 minutes.
Yeah,
and then
for
I have
sure.
I have to get out. It's not because, actually the convo with you could last much longer. Yeah. But me sitting here in that environment could not. And I've designed a lot of things in my life to avoid that fate.
Yeah. Well, and speaking of fate, this is one thing when you and I connected by email, we talked a bit back and forth about our fathers and about the fates that our father, it sounds so passive to say the fates that befell our fathers, because I know for my dad, it was a choice, right? Every choice you make is a choice not to do or be every other way. And one of the reasons I feel called to do the work I'm doing of helping people live the best version of themselves is because I saw my dad, even though he achieved phenomenal success as an entrepreneur, he paid a very high price physically, for many years emotionally, spiritually even. But when I saw my father in the hospital after having had surgery for his legs to be amputated due to complications from diabetes, I don't think I knew it in that moment, but looking back, that was when I decided two things. One, that would never be me. And two, I would do what I could to help encourage and inspire and motivate others to avoid a similar fate. But it sounds like you and I have a little bit of commonality in that way. Would you be willing to share a bit about just what your relationship with your dad was like and how that might have shaped the work that you're doing now or who you are today?
Sure. Okay, it wasn't good. It wasn't good. When I was a little kid, the good thing is that he took me often into the woods. The house where we lived, it was on the countryside, and it had this great forest just a few feet away almost, with those boulders.
In what area? Will you share with me where was this?
That was the suburbs of Paris.
Okay.
It was about 30 miles away from Paris.
Mm.
So it was a fantastic playground, and it wasn't just there. My parents we would go on a hike all the time. Whenever possible, I would go on a hike with them, and that's where my dad would encourage me to jump into his arms from a height and to climb up and scale up those boulders and do all these movements that I didn't feel ready for, but he had that kind of instinct of pushing me to do these things, to go beyond my fears.
In fact, in the book, you share an experience about a hill, right? Will you talk about that?
So I was so young that I did not remember that. He told me once in these rare moments when we could have a little conversation about the past, and he said, "I remember that time where you were so young you can't even remember, and it had rained and there was a muddy hill, and I climbed on top and I left you at the bottom, and then I let you climb it alone, and I was sliding and I was starting to be emotionally upset, and then to ask for help, and he wouldn't help me. And he would say, "No, you can't do it. You've got to do it. Climb. You've got to do it." And then finally I resolved to just do my very best to do it, and I did.
And you were like 3 or 4 years old, is that right?
Yeah, actually, it's funny because when he told me about that story, I did not remember it, but then it seemed that I still had some memory of it, actually. I believe I'd have my own memory of it. It's a little blurry. But at the same time, he said he regretted it.
Wow.
And he felt bad because I was just a really little boy, and it was maybe a little too early to teach those lessons. I think that those lessons have very, very high value actually when you're a little boy, little girl, doesn't matter. It's a very, very high value kind of lesson. It's you're on your own, and if you really fight, if you really pay attention, you can find a way to overcome that obstacle. And if you understand that lesson, then it will apply to anything in your life. Retrospectively, I totally understand what was his approach back then, what was his point. But he felt bad probably because I was really, really young.
Yeah.
So really I think that I would not actually have anything against him for that event. For other things certainly, but not about that. I think every time he encouraged me to be more brave, and he wasn't just yelling at me or demanding that I do something impossible or dangerous. He did that with enough a realistic expectation that I was able to do it and to overcome a certain level of difficulty. So it was a kind of intuitive education, very important for life, because that kind of mindset always helped me in life to just take a little more risk, to be a little braver, to have confidence that I could overcome any obstacle. So great life lesson.
Yeah. When you were a little older, it sounds like there were some other ways because I see this with pretty much everyone, right? In fact, Tony Robbins says every life is either an example or a warning. And I think, right, most lives are probably both if you look at it that way. And so, you know, I wonder with your father if there's ways that you emulate, you know, things, qualities that he had that you aspired to follow, and others that maybe you resolved to never be that way, and how that might have shaped, you know, the person that you've become.
For the most part, a counterexample, unfortunately. But if I just look at the positives, yeah. For instance, he wasn't a social person. And my social skills I had to develop later on, like much later on, because I grew up to be a very, very shy teenager. And then it's when I became a young adult that I forced myself to practice that inability to just be comfortable with myself and with people or around people. But it took me some time. So you see, there's two. You say, or Tony Robbins says, either an example or warning. It's either example or counterexample. So the example of the counterexample was he wasn't not being social person because of choice, but probably because of his own inability.
Yeah, that's a wise. I think that's a very generous insight beyond just judging him for being a certain way. By the way.
Yeah, I believe so. So, whereas I acquired the skills to be able, when I choose so, to be social with people.
Yeah.
Which has a lot to do. Number one is with just self-confidence. But a lot of people who have no self-confidence are also very social people and very skilled with social events. So self-confidence is not necessarily, it's not mandatory to be a social anymore, to be a, like a person who just like to hang out with people and be well but at the same time in my life, I'm not a person who's trying to socialize and create networks and this and that. I'm very well on my own. I'm very well with just my best friend, who's my wife, and my children, and a few friends that I see sometimes. I don't need to always be surrounded by people.
Yeah, but you're doing that anyway, though, right? I mean, like I saw MoveNat is doing a training in my hometown here of Salt Lake, and I was like, that is amazing. It seems like it's everywhere lately. So even though you maybe haven't aspired to do that consciously, it's happened, which is pretty remarkable, don't you think?
Well, I wanted to create a community.
Yeah.
And it's happening, so that's a good thing.
Yeah,
that's
like awesome. Well, and on the topic, while we're on the topic of family, I want to ask about this because I loved when I learned that you're in New Mexico. I get to visit New Mexico once or twice a year, and I love it. It really is the land of enchantment. right? And in the back of your book where you mention that you are a father, that you're a husband, and I just want to take a moment just to ask, because your kids' names are a little unique for how many people name Feather, Eagle, and Sky. Tell me a little bit about what inspired you to name your kids these names.
My wife is an officially enrolled member of a Cherokee Nation. So she's native, and so it makes sense that our children would have unusual but powerful names. So when, so that just makes sense. All our three children are also enrolled members of the Cherokee Nation. So, interestingly, whenever we've had some health, checkups to do for her when she was pregnant, and we would go to the local Indian hospital, Native Indian hospital, and we show up, and clearly we don't have dark hair and relatively dark. We kind of have fair complexions. My wife has blue eyes. She's 70% native, and so people look at us and be like, "What are these European people are doing here?"
Wow.
But yeah, that's the way it is.
Yeah.
My wife is she's a very amazing person, very wise, very healthy, very strong, very creative, very loving. She's really a goddess in every way, shape, and form. And she's my best teacher. So the reason why our children are called that way is because she chose those names, and I agreed.
Yeah.
They're beautiful names.
No, they are beautiful. And I know names, they matter so much. They have such an impact on how other people treat us, how we think of ourselves, I think ultimately what we become. And I loved learning that your name means dragon, right? Is it in a Celt language?
In a Breton language, which is a Celtic language. It's one of the several Celtic nations. You've got the Scots and, of course, the Irish and the Cornish, the Gaelic, the Welsh. Anyways, and then you have the Britons. So in that language, an Erwan is a dragon, and so there is a strong assumption that the origin of the name is that word dragon, because the explanation for almost all my life is that it came from another name that has nothing to do with that, and that it was the Breton translation, but that didn't make any sense. And recently came that new translation, that new explanation for that first name. And I thought, okay, that's really cool. That explains a lot.
Yeah. What was the translation of the other name?
It had to do with another name called Eve, which has to do with I think ivy, the tree, which is one of the sacred trees for the Celts. And so there's a saint called Saint Eve. And but Eve and Erwan are not at all the same. No. And the old pronunciation, I don't even know if anybody's interested in this, but the old pronunciation of the name, because in English or in the US, people ask me, "What's your name?" I say Erwan, because that's easy for people to pronounce. The French pronunciation is Erwan, but the original Breton pronunciation would be Erwan, and Erwan pronounces, sounds pretty much like Erwant, which is the dragon. No, that's the story behind the first name.
No, I think that's really cool. And I do think people will be interested if, for no other reason, when they think about the power of a name, where I actually think many people don't think about that deeply, where their name is an aspect of their life that's like the rest of their life, that they've been handed and they've stepped into, and then it becomes in some ways a limitation. And this idea that we can choose an identity for ourselves. And I love that these two interpretations, his name could be from this or from this, and you chose one that sounds like it's more empowering from you. And so I can see that's in some ways a different life. So I want to switch gears, and I want to ask you about a couple of things. One is this story about when you were alone in China and you came across a man who seemed to be dead. This sounded to me a little bit like the story of the Buddha. And I'm wondering if you'll kind of give us the background on what happened there and how did that have an impact on you?
Well, funny that I shared that story with you, which I've shared with, I don't know, my wife for sure, but I don't even know if I've shared it with anybody else. Yeah, at some point of my past life, I worked in China. And I spent a total of 2 years there, actually. And well, at the beginning of that part of my life, there was a factory where I was working that was in the Shanghai area.
How old were you at this time?
I was in my mid 20s. Yeah, and I think I was 25, 26. And one night, I decided to go on a stroll. It was very late. I was working on a manufacturing process that actually I had created, and that led me from France to China, to finding a partner where I could, and so I could make this manufacturing process a reality, which took me to that factory where I would spend hours on my own, often working late at night and working on experimentation on basically baking PVC in silicone molds and things like that. So this part of my life nobody knows about, very few people know about. And at the end of early morning, late at night, early morning, I don't remember exactly, but I go on a hike, and then after a mile or two, I'm completely alone in that suburban area, and there's that body on the floor, and the guy is half naked, and there's really nobody around, and I get closer, and I'm like, oh my God, that must be the person did not seem to be breathing. And I'm like, am I finding a dead body right there? That's crazy. What's going on? His pants were down. He was looking extremely frail and very dirty. And I took his pulse, and there was a little of pulse, very frail. And the breathing was so shallow that it totally looked like the person was not alive anymore. And then right away I have to think, okay, what do I do to help? What can I do? And back then I didn't have smartphones. There was really nobody around. So I put it. I'm sorry, I don't know why I have problems with my speech right now, but I took him on my back and I carried him back to the apartment where I was hosted. And right away I decided that it would probably be a good idea to give him a bath, and because his smell was really horrendous. And so I thought, hey, the person is clearly exhausted and needs a bath. I'm going to put him in the bath. And by the time I put him in the bath, man, the guy woke up in a scream, and he woke up, basically. He woke up, and he probably thought, he was wondering, wait, what am I doing here? And this white man is there. Maybe he wants to kill me or something. I don't know. The guy was completely panicked.
Was he drunk before, do you think? Or did he get robbed or something? I mean...
No, I think that he was a homeless person and that he was dying of starvation.
Wow.
And that's what it was. I think he was a very, very miserable person with no help. I don't know. And also I knew some Chinese, but not enough to actually have a conversation with him, but at this point, really, there's no conversation to be had. The guy's in a panic. And I had to calm him down and show him, look, I'm just trying to help you. I just want to help you. And then he let me give him a bath. I gave this man a bath. And then he could not do anything for himself. He could not stand on his own feet. And so I dried him. I put some of my clothes on him, and then I put him in my bed, and he fell asleep right away. I made him a tea. Had a bit of tea. I made him some soup, and he couldn't eat anything. He fell asleep right away. The next morning, I went to the office and say, hey, well, I need some help. I found somebody. So they didn't know what I was saying. Anyways, they sent somebody over, and God, it was a big mistake because the guy they sent him over didn't understand it, and thought that basically the guy sneaked in my bed at night or something, started to ask him questions, and the poor guy was so traumatized and scared that he could not answer. And the guy went over and started to yell at him, and then he slapped him in the face, and I was horrified, and I jumped on him and said, you stop doing that right now. Anyways, they called the police, and they took him away. And I had to ask and be like, he hasn't done anything right. Done anything wrong. I was just trying to help him. And I was told later on by the wife of the owner of the factory that they had taken him to a special place for, homeless people, that he would be treated right and everything, but that I should not have done that, and then that now all the towels were dirty because I was, we were sharing that apartment. And I asked the translator, I put my hand on that sculpture. There was a sculpture of a Buddha on her office. I put my hand on the Buddha and said, it's true. The towels are dirty, but my soul is clean.
Wow.
Translate that, please.
Wow.
That's all there was to do. I mean, all right, I don't know. There was nothing else to do. There was nothing else I could do. But there was no question that I was going to help this man. I was the only person around, so it was my responsibility. It was whatever you call it, karma, whatever. It was brought to me to do something. A lot of moments like that in life, it's just about choices, and you're presented with opportunities to choose and experience who you've chosen to be. If you've chosen to be a certain person, then those opportunities will show up that will give you a chance to manifest that.
Yeah, and as I hear you share that story, which is amazing, I think about how that might have been a different way of being, maybe, from who you were when you were younger. Maybe I understand you were a bit rebellious. You were not willing to, conform to the society exactly as it was organized and so forth. And I understand you actually...
Internally, I was rebellious. Externally, no.
But no, that's amazing. Well, tell me about the time. I mean, what a tragic loss with the Notre Dame, right? The recent fire there. But I understand that you climbed it at one point, and not only did you climb the scaffolding outside, but you actually carried a drum up. Is that right? Will you tell us a little bit about that? What was that about?
Yeah, I think. So I was in my early 20s, and back then, I talk about a little briefly about that in my book at the beginning, is that when I was 19, I met this crazy guy who was known because he had jumped off a helicopter by an iceberg in Iceland or in Greenland. And that was he did that with no wetsuit or anything. He just did that with a swim trunk. And that was for a brand for men, like men's underwear or something like that. And then, but of course, he didn't do that as a prank. That was part of his philosophy of life, where he practiced breathing and vegetarianism back then, barefoot. He was always barefoot. And I mean, the whole thing completely matched with my mindset. So when I heard about this guy, I decided to join him. And there you go. I started, I was better at my karate training. It was everything I wanted. It was rebellious beyond expectation. It was anti-normalcy beyond expectation. I loved it. And I fully immersed myself in his practice and philosophy, fasting, everything that today, by the way, has become a specific trend of its own. Like, you call it barefoot running or barefoot Irving. Okay, we did that. You call it intermittent fasting. We did that. You call it, eating local, seasonal, non-processed. We did that. Breathing exercises, cold immersions. We did that like almost every day. Climbing scaffoldings, jumping from roof to roof. We did that. Today, all of those they've become those like things, and they all have those thought leaders. But back then, what I did was all of this, literally. And it was back to Notre Dame. So that crazy guy that I was following, back then I was in my early 20s, he was in his late 40s and then early 50s. He turned himself into more of an artistic guy, so he started to write poetry, and then he played the kettlebell. Not the kettlebell, the kettle drum. And then he had the idea of, on New Year's Eve, to climb on the cathedral that was then renovated already. So that's 25 years ago. And to go, like this, on the front of the cathedral, and there is that huge circle-shaped sculpture that's called a rosette. A very important part of the structure of the cathedral. And with the scaffoldings, I was able to jump over the fence and climb from the outside of the scaffolding, so I could not use stairs. I had to climb outside, so holding to just a bar of metal.
In the winter?
In the winter, with wind, and then also, of course, the height, because that was probably 90 feet high. And to go to the cathedral is much higher, right? But to go to that place in the center, and I tied the drum with a scarf on my back, so it was just balanced, and it was tied across my chest and my shoulder. So one mistake meant that I would have fallen and probably died, but it was crazy time. So I did that, and when he reached the center, just in front of Rosette, he blew up what's called a flare, red flare, and starting chanting and beating the drum like crazy. And people, because it was New Year's Eve, people down there, they were going wild, and they were dancing and screaming, and it was crazy. And then he got caught on video, and it's on. You can see it on YouTube, actually. Yeah, you can see me. You can see me jumping over the fence, and the guy who's climbing with the kettle drum in his back. That's me.
Wow.
But that's just one of those crazy things we did. All right, that's not the only one. We also broke into the Louvre, the museum. Got chased by by dogs, and then by about 40 cars. Of the whole place all around was locked with police cars everywhere, and on the roofs and stuff, and whatever they thought it was some terrorist stuff, or I don't know. Back then already, we did plenty of crazy things. All right, we jumped we jumped. Oh, whatever. A lot of crazy things. Lots of stories. I could really write a whole book about it.
Yeah, sometimes I marvel at the fact that any of us make it to adulthood, but hearing your stories, especially you, and staying out of prison, for any of these kinds of stunts and activities you've done, how many times did you ever get arrested?
About 3 times, if I remember well.
Wow.
But was always released very soon after, because really I never did anything wrong, anything really criminal.
Yeah, it's not malicious.
No, there was nothing malicious about it. Okay, all right. So there's not even a law saying, I don't know. There's not. I don't know. What can they do or say?
Yeah.
You climb on the scaffoldings. Okay, we did that. What are you going to do?
Yeah. Okay, so in just a moment, I want to transition us. Before I do, I just want to ask you about this. It's the first, after you get through the manifesto in the practice of natural movement, the very first movement you talk about is breathing. And so I know you cover a lot. There's probably 12 pages in there, and a lot of I enjoyed reading. I learned quite a few new things about this simple but so infinitely deep practice. If I were to ask you, what is it, like, why is breathing so important? And how is it that so many of us are doing it so wrong? And what can we do to thrive through our breath?
It's just like breathing it's a physiological function, but it's also a pattern, and just like other physiological pattern, or like movement, for instance. Why is it that people, the way they stand up, the way they sit, and the way they move, why is it so stiff? Why is it so clumsy? The problems with our physical and physiological patterns is that they are negatively altered by the modern life again. So people are stressed, they deal with inflammation in their body because of food and stress. Everything is connected. So when breathing is going to be altered, that's one of those manifestations of a lifestyle that's already suboptimal. So the way it translates usually is that people breathe through their mouth instead of through their nose, and then they are breathing very shallow, which means that instead of breathing just a few times per minute, they breathe like 20, 30 times per minute, and only using their upper chest, upper body, upper rib cage. So that is not the healthiest breathing pattern at all. And when you change that, when you revert it to nose breathing and abdominal breathing and a calmer, slower breathing cycle, then there are a number of physiological adjustments that take place and that make you healthier, calmer. So I provide explanations in the book because, of course, there's always the possibility of talking about the science behind it, but I think that the best is the experience, because you can't think about the science of things, the science of everything. Go outside because you'll get vitamin D if you get sunlight. And, my point is, there's much more to life that is simply felt, that has to be experienced. You can't think about it all the time. So breathing is one of those fundamental functions which, if you really want to change it, you want to pay attention more. You want to pay attention right now. You want to pay attention to how you breathe. When I was a kid, my first exposure to the importance of breathing was through my clarinet teacher. And the very first lesson, before I even touched the instrument, he asked me a question. And that very first question was, what is the strongest muscle in your body? And I had no answer for that. I thought, I don't know, maybe my legs. And he said, no, it's your diaphragm. I'm like, my what? Your diaphragm. And then he starts to explain to me what the diaphragm is, and then he gives me cues and makes me feel, and then I start to breathe from the abdomen, which I did, but I did not do consciously. And then it become conscious. It become even more conscious that then I really had to use and control such abdominal breathing for my clarinet practice if I wanted to recover well and to breathe well and to have power in my notes. And then later on, when I was a teenager, I started karate. The great thing is that because of my clarinet practice, I already had breath control, great breath control, which was very, very helpful, especially because in karate, you're going to get kicked or punched in the abdomen all the time, which you need to keep your abs contracted all the time, or at least to be able to contract them extremely rapidly if you don't want to, to be, to lose your breath. And so it means that you have to breathe abdominally despite of the intense abdominal tension. And when I met that guy that I trained with in Paris, it was again the same. It was all about breath control, abdominal breathing through the nose, relaxation, very quiet breathing, and then. But the thing is that this was always applied to your movement, so you would be balancing on top of a scaffolding at a height, with no safety net. What do? You breathe. You jump off a bridge at night in the dark waters of the Seine River in Paris. What do? You breathe. You really are in control of your breath. It was everywhere in the work. It was. So that was his one of those teaching things where he would have several followers. I was one of them, and he would catch us all the time having those subconscious behaviors. Like, it was not necessarily me, but hey, here, you have tension in your shoulders. You're shrugging your shoulders. Why? Here you have tension in your hand. Your hand is like this. Why is it like this? Why is it just not relaxed? Why are you not present in your body right now? Why are you not mindful? Why are you holding your breath? Why are you tense? Why are you making all those facial expressions that are unnecessary? Why? Because you have emotion. Why do you have emotion? Why are you shy? Etc., etc. So, you see, I've learned to give myself that kind of feedback. I've learned to self-examine at every level. That doesn't mean that I see everything, but that means that I see a lot of things about my behaviors that most people cannot see about their own.
Yeah.
Breathing is one of those core aspect of your physical behavior. There's just the way you hold your head, your stance, your gestures, the levels of tension or relaxation in your body, the calmness and steadiness and strength of your breath. All of that connects together to make you either in control and healthy and confident or less. That's one of the aspects of what I talk about when I say that life is the practice of energy at every level. Those are some of the aspects, not the only ones, because we want to talk about the emotional, the spiritual, the food, of course, the environment, everything, the family, love, sexual relationships, all of that, all of it. Having a God or not having a God, praying or not praying, meditating or not meditating. What do you do with every second of your precious life? How is it spent? Towards what is it directed? How do you use it? With what agenda and how?
Yeah. I mean, life's big questions right there. Right. All very deep, very deep. And I love what you're talking about these relatively small things like our posture or our facial expression, the way we're holding our hand, that can be an indicator of something much deeper or much bigger, and cultivating the self-awareness, right? And all the benefits that can come along with that, and everything you're saying. I've only in the last few years started to really get keyed in on the importance of breath to the quality of our experience, to the results we produce. I remember doing a program with the mystic Sadhguru, and I remember he said that if you know how, if you observe someone's breath, you can know their past and their future. And I'm like, what? Maybe a mystic, or maybe a normal human with practice. So anyway, okay. So thank you for sharing that, and thank you for including that in the book. As I said, I've taken a lot away from that. I haven't found the partner to do that exercise with the partner yet, but I'm going to do that.
I don't even remember if I probably didn't put that. And you don't want to, well, you may want to find a partner to that one, but remember my clinic teacher would tell me, hey, it's the strongest muscle in your body.
Yeah.
And so in my workshop, I would demonstrate that by picking the heaviest guy I could find in the whole gang of participants and have him step with one foot and stand on one foot on my abdomen and keep breathing. And I would keep breathing, and then people could see him elevating and descending and elevating and descending. I've never said, hey, it's comfortable, like easy piece of cake. I always said, of course it's not comfortable. Of course, I wouldn't want that to last forever. But look, I am not breathing through my chest nonetheless. I still can breathe through my abdomen, and it shows you how much power you have right there. And you too can develop the same power.
In the interest of time, I want to make sure to ask you a few other questions that I think listeners will enjoy and benefit from. So let me shift us now to the lightning round. These questions, by the way, are designed, you can take as long as you want to answer them. I've designed them for me to give you a concise question. Number 1, please complete the following sentence. Life is like a
heart.
Number 2, what's something at which you wish you were better?
Love. There's always a possibility to be better at love. I'm not saying I'm bad. I'm saying I will always wish that I'm better at love.
Number 3, if you were required every day for the rest of your life to wear a T-shirt with a slogan on it, or a phrase, or a saying, or a quote, or a quip, what would the shirt say?
I love you, God.
All right. Number 4, what book, other than your own, have you gifted or recommended most often?
Conversation with God.
Neil Donald Walsh.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
I met in Paris a long time ago.
Wow. Amazing. Number 5, you travel a ton. What's one travel hack, meaning something you do or something you take with you when you travel to make your travel less painful or more enjoyable?
That's not really a hack, but if I travel with my wife and children, that just makes it much, much better than just being on my own. Yeah. So I don't know if that counts as a hack, but it is mine.
Yeah.
Otherwise, food. It's food that I bring that is not from the airport or the plane.
What do you like to be sure you have with you, food-wise?
Jerky.
Okay. All right. Number 6. What's one thing you've started or stopped doing in order to live or age well?
So definitely taking that kind of risk that are like dealing with real danger in my practice. This I've stopped. I mean, I have kids. I love I love my family. They love me. I cannot be missing. So definitely something I've stopped. And just something that I've just made the decision very recently, actually, was to fully quiet down. And what I mean by that is that being a father of 3 young kids, everything I've done to build MoveNet, that company, and then the book has taken from me so much time and energy, and I've had so much on my plate and so much to do, and I've been honestly skillfully juggling with all of that, but that was just way too much work, and at a pace that was too often too high pace. And now I just really completely made the conscious decision that I refuse to be hurried. I have an agreement with myself that whatever time anything is going to take, I'm going to take the time, so that, because when you want to do too much or too fast, you actually make the decision to accelerate time. And that time acceleration is stressful, that you like it or not. You may still feel young and have lots of energy and boundless, resources of energy to do it, but there will be a time where you can't do it anymore. And I felt that time has arrived for me. So now I'm pacing, and it's brilliant. It's so much better.
Yeah. No, that's the kind of agreement you can make with yourself that would change your whole life, right? That's beautiful. Number 7, what's one thing you wish every American knew?
Okay, I'm not sure about this question, because if I say Americans, then I'm making it somewhat implies a bias, like a kind of cultural generality about what I think about my fellow U.S. citizens. And I love my country. I love American people. They're not perfect. No culture is perfect. Well, so this being said, if there was a cultural generality that I can observe and I wish that more Americans were paying attention to, is to actually be more relaxed. There's a ton of tension, and even people can look like they're relaxed and smiling and this and that, but actually they're very busy in their head, and there's a lot of tension in their head. I think that compared to that right now I'm in Mexico, and you can say whatever you think about Mexico or Mexican people, but overall, and again that's a generality, people are more relaxed. There are pros and cons to that, but I think that there's more benefits than issues with being relaxed, and they smile more, and they're just more genuinely attentive to other people.
Yeah,
I can say that.
Yeah.
So that's maybe something that, as a culture, Americans could be inspired by. It's not about teaching a lesson or making a judgment. It's like we could be inspired by that.
Yeah. No, I wish every American knew that as well. The value of that, for sure. Okay, so let me ask you this. If people want to learn more from you or connect with you, what would you have them do?
I'm not sure if I want people to learn more about me.
Or the work you do. Let's say that, about MoveNet.
That's the thing, is that, I've not called my work the Erwan Le Corre method.
Right.
It's not after my name. I have not branded me or my name, because I never wanted people to be interested in me. I wanted people to have a tool in their hands that they can use and learn and implement, experiment to improve them. It's about, like MoveNet, MOVNAT, that's the name of my method for natural movement. That's what it is about. It's not about me. It's about the tool that you can learn. And so if you apply it, you will see that it will improve your life. Definitely. So there's the website called movnat.com, movnat.com. And of course, the Practice of Natural Movement book is my opus magnum. It's it's the work of a lifetime, really. And it explains the natural movement philosophy, but it's also mostly a how-to. So what it is, really, it's the MoveNat method book. It's not everything that the method is, but if you want to learn about this philosophy, but also most important, this practice and how it can change your life, you want to read that book.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. And as I mentioned earlier, you have programs that are available, I know at least all over the U.S. Are they offered internationally as well?
Oh, absolutely, internationally, actually. So we have thousands of certified trainers around the world. And my team, we have a MoveNat instructors team. We hold workshops around the world. So that's a lot in the U.S., but that's also Europe and Asia and whatever, South Africa, Australia, Brazil soon. We've done China, Japan. So it's an international community. Then we're also present on pardon my French, on social media. We have on Instagram, and then we have online coaching as well. We have an online course, and we have certification. So you can either come and train with us, but you can also learn how to teach this, and it's a 3-level certification.
That's
and
awesome.
What I'm currently working on, a new website called naturalmovement.com, as you would expect, shocker, and where the point is to turn my book into online video courses. So I'm currently working on that.
I want to get certified. In the work I do with coaching, I realize as I look back over the last 7 years, so much of what I've learned is from here to here. It's from the neck up. It's not totally embodied. And I know it's benefited me to just practice some of what I've learned from you and others recently, Mark Devine and John Wineland and some others. So I want to do it.
Yeah, I think it's a brilliant move.
I do want to be sure to let you know that I'm grateful for you making time to talk with me and everybody who's listening. One of the ways that I've endeavored to show that gratitude is by making a microloan on your behalf. So I went online to kiva.org and made a $100 microloan to a woman in India. Her name is Santasi. She's 32 years old. She lives in West Bengal, and she will use this money to purchase more grain that she will share in her retail business. She'll sell in her retail business. So this woman she's got 4 members in her family, makes about $129 a month. But she'll use this to help improve life for her family and those around her. So anyway, that's in your honor, that small gesture. So thank you.
That's beautiful. Thank you so much.
I'd just like to ask a few questions maybe about the creative process and about writing. You've taken a lifetime of learning and experience and knowledge, all of this, put it between 2 covers. And I'm wondering what you learned in the process of trying to distill all of this thought, all of this experience, all of this wisdom into something that people can buy, people can read, they can understand, they can enjoy, they can benefit from. And I know that's not an easy thing to do. And many, many people want to do that. But I'm wondering what you learned in the process of doing that other people might benefit from knowing. Was it like the power of routine? Was it, how useful it is to have an outline, to have a good editor, to have a co-writer, to use a certain software? Like, is there anything at all like that other people might go, oh, that's the key that unlocks where I'm stuck?
So, I don't know. My wife would tell you that I'm a Virgo, and so is she, and so that we're very organized in here. So it starts with the critical thinking. I've always had that critical thinking as far as I can remember. And so already in the design of the curriculum for the MoveNat certification, already had to detail a number of insights and to structure all of that curriculum. So doing the book was no different, but it was just a much bigger task because of the sheer volume of information that I was willing to share. Eventually, it became a 480 pages textbook, and again, 200 pages were cut. And people say it's a textbook, and people are like, whoa, it's like takes so long to read, and that's too much information. Others say, no, it's not too much. It's amazing. It's an encyclopedia. It should be sold for $200 or more. And others are like, that's not what I expected. I wanted a primer. I wanted something simpler. You know what? That book is the best version of delivering my knowledge that I could come up with after working on it for years and going through revision and reading and rereading and reproofing and re-editing and reading again and rewriting again. It's been a distillation process where I wanted to be zero fat in the end, like nothing to be changed, nothing to be added or removed. That's the result I wanted. Maybe one thing that I have not learned is to be less critical and to be less perfectionist. I have not learned that. The book did not taught me, because I would not have published that book if I had not been fully satisfied with the results.
Yeah, and that's so valuable, though, to hear you say that you never lost that what might be called a perfectionistic tendency, but you managed to complete it anyway. Because I think many people run into that and they stop. What allowed you to keep going beyond that?
Because, when I moved to the U.S., it was in 2009. In 2009, I went to an immigration lawyer in Las Vegas to get my visa. I got granted what's called an O1 visa for exceptional abilities. Means a person who brings something very unique to the community or the country, economy, whatever it is. It was already part of that application for that visa that I had a mock-up of the book. And the title was The Philosophy and Practice of Natural Movement already. And the photo was me like holding and carrying a massive stone in my lap. That's 2009. The book is published 10 years later. So either I'm a very lazy guy, or I got crazy busy, so crazy that I could not work on that book, or I'm very slow, or all of that. I don't know. But the thing is, it took me all that time for all my ideas and all my principles and all my work to mature into and to finally be manifested into that material. And I'm sorry, I was not going to do it 5 years later just because 5 years ahead already had announced it, and it was already 5 years later, and like, whoa, what people must be thinking, what is he doing? He's announced that book 5 years earlier. Well, sorry guys, it will be in 10 years, actually, 10 years later that I will publish my book. It's on my terms. It's my work. It's nobody else's. I'm not doing it because I want to be, because it's going to sell and I need the money or whatever it is. I'm not going to do it, rush it just because I want to be a published author, or I want to be a name or whatever. It's going to be published when I know that it's been done, that it's ready, that there's nothing else I can think about that I need to work on, that I need to include, that would be missing from that manuscript. Period. That's integrity.
No, that's powerful. So my last question, and thank you for sharing that. You have created something that might be called a movement, right? It might be accurately thought of as that, and clearly you've enrolled many other people. They also share this desire, this vision, and they've come aboard to participate in some way, as a trainer, as a participant, whatever. What have you learned that has been essential for you in building an organization where you have leaders who can effectively train, coach, lead others through? Material you developed?
Well, it's simply trust. But it's not that I was not able of trust. It's just that, you trust people when you observe. You get to know them, you observe that they are the right people for you in your relationship, that it is friendship, that it is love, that it is work. Those three principles of sustainable relationships are respect, trust, and then satisfaction. So for a leader to have a team, you either recruit or people come to you and say, hey, I'd like to work for you. I'm interested in your work. And then you assess them, and then you start a relationship with them, and then you start with a little something, and then the relationship starts to increase on that basis, on the basis of those three principles, which are trust, respect, and satisfaction. And there you go. And then ultimately, when, depending on your, say, levels of demand, how demanding you are in those respects of trust, respect, and relation and satisfaction, ultimately you trust people. So right now, for instance, I have a team, and they do everything so that I can focus on other creative tasks, which, for instance, I could never have written this book if I didn't have a team that was doing everything. So I've learned to have a team, and I've learned to delegate. That's the thing. Actually, it's more that thing is that I've had a hard time delegating anything. I like to do things. I've always been a loner. I've always been somebody who just likes to be taking care of business, taking care of things myself. And then now I actually love to do the opposite. I love to delegate. I've learned that along the years. Be like, now when I have a new project, I'm like, how can I have this be mostly taken care of by a person who just has the skills to do it, so I don't have to learn new skills again.
Yeah.
And so that I don't have to put my mind into this again, and so that I can just enjoy my life and only take care of the creative part of it.
No, that's amazing. And I know many people are looking for that, and delegation is a simple concept. Right? So but how do you make delegation work? What makes it effective for you?
You first you make the decision that you delegate, truly. You don't be like, oh, I think I could delegate, but in the back of your mind, you're like, you know what, I'm going to do it myself anyways. You really have to make that decision. And then secondly, it depends on the type of project, of course, and you have different people with different kind of skills. So I'm going to look at the kind of skills people have, but then I'm also going to look at the kind of people are. And in that regard, there's that kind of intuition that comes into play, where you intuitively know people are the right people to work with. First, I look at the integrity. I look at people's integrity. It doesn't matter if you're the best at what you do. If you're not a good person, and I can tell. If I don't feel that you have integrity, then you're not in my team, period.
Yeah.
That's the people who are in my team are awesome people. They're just good people. They're not just smart and skilled. They're just good people. I know that I can trust them. I know that they're good. They have good intentions. And that's very important. And all of them, that they are the people from instructors or just marketing people, whatever they are. It's just, I know that they're good people. And that energy is very important, because when you start to deal with egos and, deceptive people and stuff like that, it can ruin a team. And every successful company is made of a good team. So the team matters a lot, but the team is made of individuals. So when you recruit a new person, you got to make sure that they're not going to be, the worm in the apple.
Yeah. Again, thank you. I mean, I could go on, and maybe someday there's a part two, maybe after I do the certification in this. But at any rate, I suspect we'll meet in person somewhere, someday. Don't know when or where, but I'll look forward to it. And in the meantime, I'll be following along, reading your blogs, and finishing the book. So thank you very much for being here today. I hope you have a wonderful time on your boat.
Thank you. I've really enjoyed this convo. You have an awesome, super positive energy, really. Also a quietness of the mind that I can sense. And so thank you so much. It was an enjoyable time, and I hope that our audience has enjoyed.
Yes, I think they will. Despite living in an age where we have more comforts and conveniences than ever before, life isn't working for many people. Whether it's in the developed world, where we're dealing with depression, anxiety, addiction, divorce, jobs we hate, relationships that don't work, or people in the developing world who don't have access to clean water or sanitation or healthcare or education, or who live in conflict zones. There's a lot of people on the planet that life isn't working very well for. If you're one of those people, I invite you to connect with me at goodliving.com. I've created Life's Best Practices Breakthrough Coaching to help you navigate the transitions that we all go through. Whether you've just graduated school, you're going through a divorce, you just got married, you're headed into retirement, you're starting a business, you just lost your job, whatever it is you're facing, I've developed a 36-week course that you go through with me and a community of achievers and seekers who are committed to improving their own lives and the lives of others. So through this online program, you will have the opportunity to go deep into every area of your life, explore life's big questions, create answers for yourself in community, get clarity and accountability. If that's something you're interested to learn about, I invite you to contact me directly at brian@brianmiller.com or by visiting goodliving.com.